Okay, welcome to V2, the Institute for the Unstable Media, and welcome to Test Lab Live Coding. For those not yet familiar with this Test Lab format, this is something we do every other month, and where we invite artists and developers in the field of artistic research and development to present their latest ideas and their latest works, and also the technologies that they use. Another thing you should know about Test Lab is that we invite our audience to actively participate. So throughout the evening you'll be asked to join in the live coding tonight, or to have some fun with the things that are standing around you. So the theme for tonight is live coding, which is currently redefining the way in which software can be used during live performances. And the way in which this has changed is, or changing, is that it allows for manipulation of the code during runtime. So while programs are running, they can manipulate the coding the coding of the software. This will be more thoroughly introduced by Florian Cramer, the director of Aart Institute. He will give an introduction, and after that we'll go into the first performance of this evening, which is PowerBooks Unplugged. And they will first introduce the technologies that they use from here, and then join you among the audience to do their performances, because they play unplugged, so their volume is kind of limited. And so we have to be a bit silent, and they'll sit among you so you can look over their shoulders and see what they're doing. And also one of their virtual players will be projected on this screen. Then after the performance by PowerBooks Unplugged, we're gonna put these chairs to the wall, so we have some space here to watch the next demonstration, which will happen here, which is on a project that's currently in its preparatory stage here, which goes under the name of GameYan. And this project's combining augmented reality technology together with live coding, so that the augmented reality can actually be altered during a performance, and that opens up the opportunity to improvise with live performances. And this is a combined effort between Rnul, Carla Mulder and her theater group Langpote, and V2 Lab. And they will go more in depth into the project, the concept, and the technology that they use. And what they'll present is the outcome of a week of testing that they did last week here on this ground floor of V2. After the demonstration of the GameYan project, there will be a parallel session, 3 things happening at the same time, and you can choose which part of it you want to attend. There will be an introduction on a live coding programming language in that corner, on the language of Fluxus by Aart from the V2 Lab. There'll be an introduction to a live coding programming language called SuperCollider in this corner here, and that will be done by the people from PowerBooks Unplugged. And for those not so interested in joining in the programming side of live coding, the GameYan installation will be up and running for you to try out and have a better look at it. But before you all take your laptops out and start live coding yourself, I would like you to come back here to the stage first after the parallel session to see, or rather hear, the performance by Jean van Slaan, also known as Susie Jae, and she'll perform from this stage, an audio performance also based on live coding technology. I think I'll leave it at that, and wish you a pleasant evening, and invite Florian Cramer to do his introduction as well.
Hello, and thanks for inviting me. What I want to do is talk in 10 minutes about something like a speculative history of live coding. Where does this whole concept come from, and where it might even come from without most people being aware of. I think that the actual term live coding was coined by the British software artist Alex McNeil. And he first used it for a practice that was very punk-like, or well, Jabba-like, because what he actually did is he opened a couple of terminal windows on his Linux laptop, opened the Emacs editor, which is a standard Unix editor, and live coded some Perl routines which were generating very rough Java-style beat sounds. And then he was just changing the parameters in the source code, saving the files so that the sounds would change, and that was his performance, which he also performed together with Alex McLean and other British software artists. So this is where it comes from, and I think it has a lot of potential because, first of all, it really challenged the classical divide between an artist and a programmer that is very common in digital arts, and which I think is very unfortunate, that you have an artist or a designer who comes up with an idea, and then you have a programmer, slave, or technician who's implementing it, and often that leads to misunderstandings or failed projects or limited potential of those works. It's also a challenge to the divide between coding and performance. Michel has mentioned that in his introduction. It also challenged the divide between so-called generative and so-called non-generative or performance art. So suddenly these categories are in a flux. I think also what I really like about the initial Alex McLean performances is that they're really low-tech, so it's not programming as a black art or high craftsmanship, but really as a kind of populist, low-tech practice, well, similar to a poetry slam, I would almost say. Yeah? It's like you start with something like poetry, and which has, over the centuries, become a very refined, almost aristocratic art, and you have a poet who writes something, and then maybe you have actors or professional recitators who recite the poetry, and then somebody comes in and just makes a kind of improvised poetry slam in order to bring back like original material qualities to poetry. I also think it's really closer to true interactivity because there is the strong performance element in live coding, so it's about social interaction, and I think this is what true interactivity is about. It's never something that is the same as machine feedback, and I think it's the real problem of interactive art that it completely mixes up interaction with machine feedback. So this is a good example of, well, you cannot replace the live code over the machine in that performance, and that I think is a very substantial part of it. On the other hand, you can say live coding, and now, well, you cannot see too much on that screenshot, but it's actually a screenshot, terminal screenshot of the GNU debugger, the GDB, and you can say live coding on a technical way is what every professional programmer does, namely the so-called debugging means that you try to find an error in a computer program by executing it in real time, step by step, and you can interrupt it at any stage, and then you can check what the program is currently doing, which kind of data it generates, and if you see that there is an error, then you see, there is the error in this line of my program. So you can say debugging is actually also live coding, yeah, in a technical sense. So why then care about live coding in digital arts if it's something like debugging? Well, you can find a hint on Alex McLean's own website, and there you see also the extent of historical reflection. This is a musical score that was created by Swedish musicians, composers collective called Click Nielsen in 1975. And what you see, it's actually a performance score, yeah? But it's a kind of recursive or self-reflexive performance score. So it says, well, the first instruction is you may add a new instruction to your list or modify an existing one. Second, delete. You may delete one instruction from your list. Third, exchange one instruction list with another player of your choice. They must defer but may choose which set to exchange with you if they have more than one. And so on and so on. Sonification, and it's for a sound performance, for an instrumental performance. But what really happens is that a very classical genre of European art, namely the score, the musical score, suddenly becomes an area of live coding. Yeah? And Now, I think that the link between music and programming is not at all coincidental or metaphorical, because in the European cultural tradition, it really started with Pythagoras and his equation of the octave with a arithmetic division by 2, so that there was an analogy of mathematical laws and musical laws, and up to the Middle Ages, up to the Renaissance, music in universities was actually taught as part of the canon of the sciences. It was grouped together with mathematics, geometry, and astronomy in one area of arts or sciences, and not with the humanities. That's a relatively recent concept. So why was that the case? Yeah, because if you think of classical European score notation, it's a lot actually like a programming language. Yeah? Because it is a formal instruction code. If you wish, the composer is something like a programmer, and then you have instrumentalists who are something like executioners of the piece, and the connection becomes really non-metaphorical but very literal if you think of musical automata, like for example the player piano, the mechanical pianos which work with piano rolls. There, the piano roll really is a code. Is a written program, well, it's not coincidental because actually modern computing comes out of a tradition. First of all, the textile industry and the kind of machine instructions that were used there, and then also piano rolls pretty much built a prehistory of modern computing. So you could say live coding in terms of music is something like a score, a formal score, but a formal score that is not fixed but gets modified in real time. And what I'm projecting here is a really early example for that in 20th century music. It is the Variations No. 2 by John Cage from 1958. And actually, what you can see is that these lines and circles, these lines and dots, are actually on a set of transparent foils. Well, first of all, it's up to the performer to interpret what these lines and dots actually mean, how to perform them, how to translate them into a musical performance. But most importantly, and that's just what I unfortunately cannot show, is that the score is not fixed in itself, but since it's these 3 transparent foils, you can arrange them in any way you want. So you can actually move those lines and move those dots. So it's a dynamic score in itself. So in that way, the musician, the performer, already becomes a co-author, a modifier of a score. You could call it an interactive score with some strings attached. And I think there's actually a pretty straightforward historical line from that to the more recent live coding practices. A composer who was very closely linked to John Cage was Christian Wolff, the same generation as John Cage, and you see him here together with Morton Feldman. Morton Feldman is on the left and Christian Wolff is on the right. The two, John Cage or Brown, really formed one school of composing of so-called indeterministic music. But I think that of those 4 composers, Christian Wolff was really the most radical in his vision of, if you want live coding. This is a quote from him. What he wants to do is to turn the making of music into a collaborative and transforming activity, performer into composer, into listener, into composer, into performer, etc. The cooperative character of the activity to the exact source of the music, to stir up through the production of the music a sense of social conditions in which we live and how these might be changed. It is very political. He was very much on the left wing. He was socialist, if not communist, and additionally politicized in the 1960s. So his idea is really, well, just like a Marxist is thinking about the relation between employer and worker, you also have to think about the relation between boss and worker in musical composition, namely the composer and the musicians. Of course, this runs historically parallel then to another practice of non-composed, non-fixed musical performance, namely here, this is the record which gave birth to the word free jazz by Ornette Coleman, a collective improvisation. The element is very strong. It's almost like a manifesto, this record cover. And what is also, I think, very significant is the cover art, the little square there. If you enlarge it, see, it's actually a painting by Jackson Pollock. So the idea is that of a free musical practice, but I think that shows also the limitations of it in linking it to live coding, because the idea was really, it's non-formal, it's non-restricted, we do not work with instructions. Whereas the experimental scores by Christian Wolff or John Cage really worked with this duality of improvisation and predetermination of coding and then adaptation of that coding. This is also well, one of the most important music collectives who practice that duality of improvisation and yeah, they call it live composing actually. And this is why I have to talk about it today. It was the British music collective AMM. And actually they were performing in Rotterdam just a couple of months ago at Worm. Maybe some of you saw that. And AMM, actually I think they even tried to play with Ornette Coleman. They also tried to play with Paul McCartney. But they both found that they were too preconditioned by their respective musical styles, be it jazz music or be it pop music. So their idea was really to reinvent the musical language, and the important part of that group was the British composer Cornelius Cardew, who was a student of Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, but then very much turned against his teacher and was ultimately speaking up against the Western musical tradition. Another such group well, was centered around the pianist Frederick Rzewski, John Teitelbaum and Alvin Curran. Actually, all these collectives are linked. Rzewski is a very important pianist who played John Cage and Morton Feldman. If you go into Donner and look at the music section, John Cage, you will probably find many records performed by Rzewski. But Rzewski was also playing with the AMM collective and later with I just have like with the Cornelius Cardew, and Cornelius Cardew, after dropping out of AMM, founded a new project, the Scratch Orchestra. It's not related to musical scratching as we know it from rap and hip hop, but this term was coined in 1970, and which is one, let's say, of the big unknown, but perhaps most influential musical projects of the 20th century avant-garde, because it combined both professional musicians and amateurs, or people who couldn't even play an instrument, and both composers and both improvisers. And part of that group were Michael Nyman and Brian Eno. And so there was also the idea of crossing the boundaries between improvisation and composing in this collective, and also linked to a very strong left-wing 1960s political agenda. Rzewski, Scratch Orchestra, AMM, Christian Wolff, they all were political radicals and really thought about not only reinventing music, but also reinventing politics and society through the way music was played. Oh yeah, that's it. I thought I forgot something. A little thing, if you can look it up, the playing strategies by, the oblique strategies by Brian Eno, which is a set of card decks with little instructions for performance. That is directly derived from his own practice with the Scratch Orchestra. And to wind back very quickly, I think, so if you go to Click Nielsen, back to that Swedish group, you can see how their approach of you could say, mutating score was really the historical result of that tradition of the musical avant-garde that was sketching, that was going from John Cage to the Scratch Orchestra. But you could say the blind spot of John Cage and others was that they didn't thoroughly think about the control of the scores. Yeah? Even with the transparence of John Cage, he made those transparent. Whereas here, it gets more radical in the sense that the score itself can be rewritten. And I think this is just what we are going to see in various instances also tonight. The theatrical performance, multimedia performance, musical performance, that is working exactly with those paradigms, just translated into computer software, and then that link, I think, hopefully can be be self-evident in what you see.
Thanks, Florian, for this introduction and putting things in context. Maybe it's wise to keep questions for now and see the PowerBook Unplugged performance first, so we have some more, so we also get a practical view on things. So if you want to start now. So they will first introduce their work and then do a small performance on them.
Hello everyone, good evening. We're PowerBooks Unplugged.
Half of it.
Half of PowerBooks Unplugged actually. We tend to be between 4 and 6 persons. Tonight we're only 3, so yeah. Anyway, we'll just do it in 3 persons. The title of our talk is what you can see here already, I hope. Distributed Persons and Paranoid Letters. So when you consider the role of code, traditionally code tends to be technical solutions to mathematical problems.
Instructions for machines.
Or instructions for machines or tools to do tasks for you. There's also an alternative view of considering code a form of literature, which you can also see in things like code art, or in Quines, which are programs that can actually write themselves back as code. And we also consider code to be sort of a double thing between this view of literature and the enactment of ideas, being either the realization of something that you're thinking about or a simulation of something that could happen in the real world but that doesn't, or just sort of happens.
Yeah. So we have a double interpretation. First of all, we have code sort of describing sound, and at the same time this code makes up the sound. So what you get is you continuously go back executing the code and listening to it and refining it, and actually what you see as text becomes very close to what you hear in your mind. It sort of mingles.
Yeah, one unit of what we are dealing with while we are playing in the group is we could call it micro composition. Like, of course, we don't have the whole composition in one. Like, yeah, that would be tape music perhaps if you perform electronically and have the whole thing. Or yeah, the units that we have are a bit more compact, rather small. And here we have a sort of inspirational example from 500 years ago by Athanasius Kirchner. This is actually not a piece of poetry, but it's according to him a way to explain how echoes works. Like it's a tractate about acoustics, and he gives this list of in Latin of words that follow each other, and it looks very algorithmical. And so, of course, do our codes be algorithmical and make some aesthetical output.
So if you so the kind of musical structures that we're working with, we consider them to be miniature algorithmic compositions that go between different scales, which are basically time scales, scales of musical time, if you want to put it that way. So the micro time scale would be things that happen so quickly that you don't perceive them as individual events. So if you have, say, 500 very tiny snippets of sound happening in half a second, you wouldn't hear the individual things, you would hear them as one cloud of things. That would be the micro time scale. The meso time scale would correspond to things that you would usually consider to be melodies or rhythms or things that consist of individual notes, and the macro scale is everything that happens above that. So larger things like phrases, parts of pieces.
Music. Yeah, we like to call these codelets, which are code, but not an entire program that can run from one end to the other and produces a defined output. It's just little parts of code that contain or that produce some sound of one of these scales described here, and it's also the units of code that we exchange within each other, because we have this wireless network running between our computers. We'll see that later.
Allows for communication quite easy.
So it's a mouthful of code that is quite easy also to read during the performance. And this can be just a single sound, or as Alberto said, a microstructure that is perceived as a single tone. It can be a longer phrase which has a defined shape, a sort of gestalt, a spiraling thing or whatever else. And yeah, or textures that are...
Or textures that run for longer times and where it's interesting to be able to go into them and change them while they are running. So to go back and forth between the technical concepts and the aesthetic ideas, the topology of communication that we use is we're usually between 4 and 6 players. Since today we're only 3, we decided to reduce the lower limit a bit, so on average we're still legal. Basically every player has a laptop with a client and a server program running on it. Super Collider is split into these two parts, with the client being the logic machine that creates musical structures that unfold in time, and the server is the program that does the sound synthesis. So this exists on all the machines.
The client is also the part that you look at, where the code is written, executed, exchanged, etc.
It's the physical part of the music, and the server is the rendered.
The audible part of it. So for every player, you have this structure that the client program of every player can talk to both the client and the server of the other people. So both the text gets sent around to everybody who's playing, and the sound events can get sent around to everybody that's playing.
It's not the audio that is sent around. Maybe that's important to say. We don't send audio between each other because each computer can render its own audio, but we send descriptions or commands to start, stop, or modify audio. And so this means that I can play a sound on his computer, but it also means that I can send him a message that he might accept or not, and play a sound or send back to me.
So to go back to the aesthetic idea of distributed persons and purloined letters, if you consider the history of technically mediated communication, you could say that letters existed for a very, very long time. In antiquity, letters were being sent back and forth and took pretty long times. The next major step, you could say, would be the digitization, or the reduction to a set of symbolic representations by the typewriter, and eventually the telegraph, which
speeds up the proliferation of the communication. And now we have a sort of computer can be seen as a sort of mixture between a typewriter and a telegraph, with the network that we are employing. And this letter aspect is quite important to us, as we are sending these codelets around and modifying, and everybody gets them sent back, which, yeah, we think of it like a conversation. Actually, it's not so much of a free jazz improvisation performance, but we tend to keep it like a conversation, which can also be very interesting also for people that are not actively taking part in it.
So it's like polyphonically circulating letters, if you want to put it that way. Okay.
Back to technique.
Yeah. Super Collider users might be familiar with the objects that are written down here. We use placeholders called proxies mainly, and there's for synth processes there's something called node proxy, also called ndef, and for routines there's a task proxy or tdef. For patterns there's the pattern proxy or pdef. So basically an ndef is an abstraction for something that's running on the server really, and a tdef and a pdef are things that are more client oriented, where you actually communicate with the node proxies or the ndefs. That's how it's done. And what it makes you do is change a running process on the fly. That's the important thing about it.
Yeah, this is actually the one thing that suddenly in Super Collider allows us for easy live coding. You can imagine this is the proxy is a container that will always stay the same. I can create it, and until I thresh it, it stays the same. But at any time, the content can be exchanged, and this proxy class actually does everything for me. I don't have to care to empty the bottle and fill it up again. I just say what I want next. It would like crossfade one sound into the next one.
Okay. So just to show you tiniest little examples, in this extension to Super Collider called jitlib, proxies are organized by names and they stay in memory. So you have this problem of how do you remember all the stuff that you've made by name and keep track of what's going on. And for that we've come up with this concept of the disposable GUI, which, to show you quickly, you make a GUI this shows you all the stuff that we played in rehearsal earlier. So there's all kinds of different tasks, and if I put one...
Basically just a list of names with a few buttons to start and stop these tasks.
So if I put in a new tdef with a new name, it comes up here. And if I give that same tdef something to do, like play a little structure.
Well, now it's defined, but it has no content. It's just there as a name. It has its memory place. I can try to start it.
So if I play this, you can see that I can see that it's playing, and I see when it stops. So I have some kind of idea of all the stuff that's going on. If I'm managing like 20 things going on at the same time, I don't have enough memory for that. So
I can restart it at any time.
So why not let machines do this? And you can throw the GUIs away at any moment. Nothing depends on them, so it's a very convenient way of keeping track of what's going on. If you want to look back into what has gone on before, there's an object called history, which actually, if I do something, if I write a little program and bring up the history window, it should actually show me, let's see, probably this one has updated. I can see all the earlier lines of code that somebody executed, and I can see all the stuff that the other people have done that got sent around to me. So this is how the communication really works. Okay.
Basically, the computer cares about dispatching everything that I execute on my computer to the peers in the network. So everybody has access, and this is the interface to go back in history and see what's happening, has happened when. It also would allow for complete playback of our performance, because it's time tagged and would sound pretty exactly the same at a later point in time.
If you want to look into the future, or to consider the future, it's hard to see things. You could send messages through history, but it's kind of hard to pay attention to that and actually notice important things. So for that we have the shout class, which I think is sort of self-explaining. We're probably over time by now already, right? I'll try and speed up. So to get into the aesthetic considerations, we really enjoy working with deliberate constraints. Some of them are physical.
Yeah, well, of course, we use a laptop as our main instrument, and this brings certain constraints. And the most important constraint would be the low volume, and the fact that you don't have any bass, nothing below 300 hertz. So we use this in a creative way, and even the distortion that you get by almost getting to the 0 dB, the clipping sound we use in our own way.
This is another set of constraints. We weren't sure whether this was aesthetical constraints or strategical constraints. Anyway, what we have, we limit ourselves to microsound as the main material. On one hand, because it's we like it, and because it's very interesting to mold. The code as our main interface, of course, is a big limitation. If you will hardly find any serious musician on stage doing a performance in a concert place acting with code, because it's very slow. That's a big downside. But on the other hand, we really like what we get out of it is perfect flexibility. Like at any moment we can decide to change this or that detail of the process, which elsewhere would hardly be possible, because the GUI or some hardware interface only allows us to control a very well defined set of things.
Yeah, and it's easily scalable, of course. Over time you can make something very small, like we said before. Leverage between the micro, the meso, and the macro timescales.
Okay. So we find that this creates interesting performance situations. You don't need to be on stage with this. It's very natural to be in the park. So we consider the laptop to be sort of the equivalent of the folk guitar in the 60s. Probably more people play laptops now than guitars. I still haven't checked the statistics on that, but I'd be curious about it. So if somebody has data about that, tell me. The laptop. It's interesting to also take the laptop serious as a physical object that exists in history right now. We don't know whether laptops like that exist in 10 years, so we may actually have to keep them for historical performance practice. And we find that low volume is really interesting because it creates a different kind of attention. Okay. So, okay. The implications of using microsound or granular synthesis, which is sort of an equivalent to that, is that it's really very almost infinitely moldable. You can change so many details about it. And the idea of particle-based synthesis, of using little snippets of sound, is they really spatialize very well. You can hear very nicely how they jump between different physical sources.
That's also the reason why we are not sitting in front of you all together, because you wouldn't hear much different. We tend to mix with the audience, so you can hear the sounds coming from different places.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it leaves a lot of space for many layers of things going on, and you get lots of transparency almost for free. We find this similar to sound ecology, and as bioacoustics would consider it. So finding spaces in time and in rhythm and in frequency where you can hear your own little thing going on. Okay. So we think code is about modeling ideas and not about it adjusting machines, and it's nice to have multiple levels of access. And the main thing is that the difference between how we read sounds and imagine they will be, and what the process actually sounds like, and then thinking about that and reacting to that, this is what we find really interesting. So we'll start playing now. Thank you.
Escape.
context and the history from Florian. You've seen a live performance. Maybe people have one or two short questions that we can handle here. And in the meantime, the game young people can prepare themselves for their demonstration.
I encourage you to ask a question, otherwise I will ask. So we have to be quick. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really wondering where you want to use this for. Just you gonna put it on a website or something so people at home can use it, or just for yourself so other people can listen to you working? Sorry?
Well, I mean, you can get, we do distribute mini versions of it, so you can look at subsets of it, and if you want to play that like that, you're very welcome. So if you want to come by later, please do so.
Right.
Apart from that, mainly we really enjoy playing like that, so that's the main purpose of doing this show.
Because I kind of got the idea I could create something like MSN with this, and then a lot of people at home could put their own sounds in it, so you could get a worldwide music playing. That was kind of the idea I thought you were heading for.
Would be possible. I'm not sure if I want to spend much time on setting up something like that. So, but if you are, maybe you want to do that.
Well, not yet.
Okay, is there another audience question? Rnul, question?
Well, I'm the audience, so I take this mic. I wonder, okay, we hear the music and we also see the code on the screen, and we know from your explanations we can make some sense out of it. But if I play the devil's advocate and ask a vertic question, what aesthetic difference does it really make? Whether this is live coded or if you use a more traditional music playing approach. Is it how essential is it for the music that we hear that is live coded?
Well, we didn't know beforehand what it's going to turn out like. So it's just what's interesting about any kind of improvisation concept that you have some kind of idea of what you want to do, but it's not very fixed. So it's like a conversation. We don't know where it will go. It's just open-ended.
But would you say if you wouldn't have this kind of instrument, yeah, this kind of coding instrument, but you would have something that's more, let's say, a more conventional instrument without algorithmic programming capabilities, would that generate something completely different you would not be happy with?
In a live situation, it would be quite difficult to the same kind of fluidity with different sounds, especially react to what other people do, how you would do that. I wouldn't know a way how to do it except for generating music from text.
Do we have to switch now? Or I think there's one more question.
Well, maybe we should, you can save your question for the introduction on Supercloud, and then Powerful Unplugged will later inform you in the corner. Yeah? And let's switch to hear Game Young. In the meantime, we'll get these seats out of the way for you.
So I would like to give a very brief background to the project that we will demonstrate to you now. Basically, we had we called it a test week last
basically turns out that it is a lot about communication amongst them that produces the visual effects and also audio effects that you can witness in a few minutes. So, yeah, it's a lot about the flexibility of the software and being able to alter it very quickly or even real time. Just a little bit, some technical details, maybe you find them interesting. In previous projects, we did work with FP2 Lab for Augmented Reality, but we discovered that the technologies they are quite new and very difficult to integrate. So we ended up a lot of time calling make and just waiting for the program to compile. And it, yeah, because you had to figure out so much stuff and make so many new connections, it took too long. And so what we did, we started a new research project actually. We call it the VGE, the V2 Gaming Engine, and it is basically a scheme which is a scripting language, a scheme attached to a more serious, or no, how to put it, to a real-time 3D environment, Ogre in this case. And having this scheme interface to a 3D world allows for very rapid and iterative addition and developing of code. So, and then we met Carla Mulder, and she is a theater maker. She is actually not a technological person. She enjoys technology, and she will tell you a lot about why she ended up in this 3D stereoscopic way. But so we met. We thought it would be interesting to have this test week to figure out where exactly we meet, to work with her ideas, her inputs, and in contact with the developers of the V2 Lab. And what is also very interesting is that we also have some other developers / artists from Rnul. And basically, of course, you can talk about all the stuff that you're going to do in such a week, but still you meet in that week, and that's actually where the so-called action happens. And yeah, it's very interesting to see how these, like I said before, like these communication patterns develop. And I would like to also mention very kind support of Joris Weidom. He's the head of the research group Virtual Theater. And I think he brought a lot of his students tonight. For him, this process is also very interesting because he likes, he's researching how these virtual theater processes come about. And well, we just did a very brief introduction to such a process last week, and hopefully I kept my introduction short enough so that I can give Carla the space to give a more in-depth introduction in the content and demonstration of the content of the project.
Everybody has the Polaroid glasses, otherwise you will miss half of the performance. And the best thing is to stand over here. So you have to come together. And after the performance, we kindly request you to give them back to us, because we need them for the theater play we are developing. And also you don't have anything at home, it doesn't work. It only works in our performance. So please give it back. Okay. A couple of years ago, I figured out, I found a very old photo archive of my grandfather. I will step aside, otherwise I will disturb the stereoscopic. This is, these are old pictures from 1900 made by my grandfather on glass, negatives and positives. And this is stereoscopic. This boy, this is my grandmother with her son called Jan. And the story we are going to develop in the theater play is called Game Jan. So it is about this little boy. Okay, I will just show you a couple of the pictures to introduce my family. This is my grandfather who made all the pictures, my grandmother and their firstborn daughter. This is the whole family. The little boy in the middle with the blonde hair is my father. So now you know my whole family. Okay, and this is where they got married. So here it started all. Okay, this is just to have a brief introduction about the stereoscopic history of the whole project. Okay, shall we go to the other? Okay, now I will step in, so I won't disturb the 3D. Jan, the little boy, went to the south of France and died when he was like 22 years old in 1938. When I found the whole archive, there was also this whole documents about how he died, because our family thought that he was murdered by an English woman. So this is where the murder comes in. And the theater piece I'm going to develop next year is about this mystery. Is it a murder mystery, or is it just not right interpreted facts? The thing with the 3D photographs, which is very interesting for me, is to go in. When you see the 3D effect, you want to go in the picture. It is as if you can go in the picture and just touch the people from 100 years ago. So this is what I want to do in my performance. I want to get in the picture. I want to get in the whole thing, the whole story, that the story is going to be all around me. And for this I have the help of Rnul and of V2, because I want to also to try to manipulate the things in the theatrical environment, and to be able to react as an actor with the theatrical environment. You need a kind of improvisation with the technique. So you need a real-life tracking, and you need a live coding. This is what we try to figure out in the whole week. I just want to give you a couple of presentations what we did. Okay, so I want you to introduce to the victim, and the victim is Jan. This is Jan. Just want to introduce him to you. He's killed. Jan is killed by Mrs. Facet. Just want to introduce you, Mrs. Facet, or do you want to see Jan? Or just have a good look at Mrs. Facet, because she was really not very nice. She looked like a morphinist. Yes, that's what the people say. Okay, so we have Mrs. Facet. I just put her down. Okay, go. But I will stay. Jan will stay here. Okay, Jan, come. Come with me. Come. Come, Jan. Come. Yes. Okay, you sit here. But before Jan met Mrs. Facet, he went with the bike to a pub. So Jan was sitting on his bike and they drove to the pub. They came to the pub. So Jan put away his bike went into the pub and met Mrs. Facet. So this is where the story starts. We can put away the bike. Okay, now, what happened afterwards? They went to the room of Jan. And in the room of Jan, there was a lamp. So this lamp was standing in, it was not standing in this corner, no, it was standing in this corner. Well, the strange thing is, with the lamp, that there was also a handkerchief. There was a handkerchief, the lamp was on, and the handkerchief was hanging over the lamp. This was very strange. So there was this lamp, the lamp, with the handkerchief hanging over it. And Jan and Mrs. Facet. Okay. So this is what we try to... I just want to stop now the little presentation of this part. What we are doing here, that Rnul, I just want to explain something about it. Rnul, Rob and Aart are tracking my motions so that they, the pictures can follow what I'm doing. So I'm manipulating in the projection. We can now maybe show the gallery, the portrait gallery that I'm walking through. Okay. So when I just started the story, you have a couple of ingredients. You have the bike. You have the shoes of the man who was walking through the how do you call it, through the garden. There was a waiter. The waiter was also there. He's also very important, the waiter. And what is very, very important is the piano, but the piano is still over there. So next time it will be in the front of it. So what I can do is really go into this 3D world, or go out of it again. Or, oh no, I want to tell you something more. Okay, this is what we figured out also. Shall we do with the sound? The tracking with the sound. So I can change from because of I can now change the music. I can change the mood of the presentation. So I can make it more. If I really want to say something about a murder, I can get in front of it. Or if I just want to say something about this beautiful music they played, I just stand here. Or if I just want to think about, no, what do I don't know which story I want to tell. I just go, no, I just want to. So you can also put the volume on my tracking. And we can also go from the stereo, from the left to the right. If I go like this, really try to make a difference. So I can really bring you into this world by moving around in this theatrical environment of mine, and also interact with the projection and with the 3D story. So I can become part of the whole environment. And improvise with it. When I'm rehearsing, improvise with the whole environment and with the technical stuff. So this is what we found out in the test week. We didn't. Well, we did also this part of it. So when I'm talking and trying to tell you more about the program and about the things that I found, you can also add text with it. So the whole document, the whole medical document is still available, and also all the witnesses we have them all, and we can also project all the look. He's just now real time translating or putting down what I'm talking about. So if I say Mrs. Facette is a murderer, then now it's proved because it's written down. Okay, if you, I don't know if you can see on that side what Rob and Aart are doing. Now, if so you can see what it's what I'm seeing. So I can really also direct myself, because I can see how I'm put into the whole projection, that I stay out of the projection, because when I get into the 3D projection, it really disturbs your view as an audience. And they can follow me also. So maybe it's interesting if Rob and Aart tell something about the technical part of it.
Microphone. Hello. Yeah. This is a camera which hangs there, and we just track the position of Carla, where she walks, and yeah, you have to see it the way around. But yeah, there are. We just we track it with video. We use some different kind of tracking technologies with video. We just see that something is moving here, and just kind of shape, and we say to the computer, stay on that shape and follow that, and we get the coordinates of these where she walks. So and we send them the coordinates to the VGE. Maybe you can show something like that. But oh, we have to restart. Okay. But then the coordinates translate to the 3D space where Carla is walking in. So if she go back, like to the screen, that's the Z as of the space. What you saw when she walked through the space itself. So yeah, what's more interesting? Yeah, we have got several tracking points. What you saw with the papers you got. Each paper you can give another color. It's like sort of. I can just point this on this, and if I want to say that, I just click on the white papers, and it will stock on the white paper. So yeah, we can all get all the positions of the objects, because one color we can attach to an object. What you saw just like the murderer or something else. So, and yeah, we can do it up like a lot of tracking points, but yeah, we just practice now with a couple. Otherwise, it will be very disturbing for Carla. Also, what I'm always all tracking now. So yeah, now you can see she's walking, but like if she's here, this is the position she walks. So, and it will translate to the ZS of the space. And yeah, with this data of the tracking, we just can control almost everything, like the music you saw, and we also work with really physical objects which move with like a little car or something rotating, or you can. We just have a week of testing all kinds of different things. So maybe something of the VGE.
Well, the VG is just a visualization part of the whole thing, because I'm getting the coordinates from them, and VG is just the OpenGL rendering for the images you see over there, and we define stereoscopic cameras over there. You can position them somewhere in space, and you can have some default objects in there that we put in there just for our own sake, to have some reference of where these pillars are and where she might be in space. But as you can see right now, we had to really exaggerate the movement of the camera, because if you do it a one-by-one translation, in the effect will be very little of the moving stuff in front of you, and you see only a small movement of the virtual objects, and you really want to exaggerate it. That's why it looks like she's standing over here besides these pillars, because these are those pillars over there, and she's a bit farther away from that. So in VGE we have a simple scheme scripting language that we can very easily change everything. So that's what we tested. Okay.
So, is there any questions for Carla or some of the technical staff here?
Yeah, I would be willing to know, how does that scale? Now, seeing you as one performer, and the microphone is not on, but everybody can hear me. How does it scale? In a traditional theatre performance, you're looking at 3, 4, 6 people on stage. How does that scale with that whole mechanism and tracing and tracking?
Yes, well, what we are now thinking about, that we are not going to play with 6 people, with 1 or 2, because it is about me getting into this 3D world. It's about my preoccupation with going to that I really want to be a part of this 3D environment, and really want to find out the mystery. The murder mystery. So it's more about like the content of the play will be that I'm all surrounded by a data walk, a data cloud that is coming out of this out of the blue, to be, and it's really going to be all around me, and I'm going to reconstruct the whole part of this mystery.
One follow-up question. Would it be possible in a further extension of that play that you would interact with virtual agents?
Sorry?
Would it be possible that you would interact with virtual agents, like automatic actors somewhere in the computer that would start to get in dialogue with you?
To be honest, we are now, this is the first test week we did. We are going to, hopefully we're going to have a couple of more. And when we are brainstorming about it, we really are talking about how it is if you can interfere with the other techniques, like for instance Joris just showed us last week what he is working out now, and it's like a full body scan in 3D, and then you can really interact with full body.
I'm interested to know whether you specifically want to use the interactivity to tell every time a different story, or sort of interact yourself and find your way through the 3D environment, or are you foreseeing a sort of theater play where you basically rehearse the kind of story you're going to tell?
Well, that's
if you referring to the story of the murder, it seems like a linear story to me.
Well, it's not because when you read the whole documents, it's like you have a look through a kaleidoscope, and you see all the time you see the whole story from another point of view. So there is not a linear way of telling the story. It's about, okay, so now this is put in, this kind of thing. Now here somebody says that Mrs. Facette is smoking. Oh, another one says, no, she's not smoking. So it's from all kinds of perspectives, the whole story is filled up. And in the end, it's all a projection. I mean, it's not, you don't know if it's true.
Basically, you're planning to have a theater production that changes like all the time.
Yes.
I have a question both to the technical stuff and to Carla. Because I understand that this is not really a live coding project, right? I mean, it's a live coding project in the sense that you have been debugging this whole thing, and you have been live coding. Right, but yeah, that's okay. I understand that the development phase has been the typical live coding in the sense of debugging, since we're discussing this now in the larger context of the actual performance, could you actually think of well, letting Carla not only control the objects, but actually interfere with the programming in a much more radical way? Because that is, for me, the crucial question of this whole panel and this whole evening here. Or would you say it's in the traditional model of interactivity as machine feedback?
Well, the thing is that I think it's interesting that not only I am interacting with the objects, with the 3D objects, but they are also interacting with me, so they can also send me somewhere I do not want to go, maybe. I mean, I can imagine that it's interesting. I'm not somebody who can program. I cannot sit behind a computer and do that. It's not my...
But probably during the live performances, there might be some technicians on stage who can dynamically alter the behavior just to soothe the audience that is there. Maybe on an evening they want to have more movement or bigger objects, or during the stage if the programmer feels like the audience needs this kind of things, or change the audio volume, so then they also become performing.
Yes, it is. The setup is that the technicians are also on the stage. It's not that they're sitting in the back. Is that what you mean?
Well, it was my general, let's say, a bit critical question into the model of performer versus programmer, whether this is something that your system really can overcome, or whether you the point is that you still have a traditional divide between the performer and the programmer, and whether at some point you might even feel like you are, well, metaphorically a prisoner in Plato's cave. Huh? You are in this cave, and you have to interact with the limitations that the system imposes upon you. But you
Nou, met de rehearsals we did last week.
Microphone.
Carla had constantly feedback, or like say, I want to have not shoes, but I want a whole other shape, and then we were like, okay, we make another shape in the program, like, almost real time then. But that's obviously the difficult part, to make real time another object, but that we are trying now to do that.
Yeah, our gain is to have an environment, a theatrical environment, also to rehearse with, that it's as flexible as we are as actors, so that you really can improvise with the technique and with the 3D technique. So that's what we want to set up.
Okay, I think this is an interesting discussion there that we can continue later on this evening. I just want to announce that for the people that want to get an introduction on Super Collider, you have to be in this corner. And for the people that want to have an introduction on Fluxus, you can you go in that corner and have Archim explain it to you. For the people that want to know more about Game Jan, Carla will be around the rest of the evening here, I think. And please hand back your 3D glasses in the box there in the corner.
It's going way over my head. Het is geen spelletje. Laat maar. What do you mean I have no life? I'm a gamer. I've got millions. I don't need a life. I've got three. An extra netback. Mijn leven is inderdaad verwoest. Nee, ik ben helemaal mooi. En sindsdien word ik wakker. Is het opeens een grote man in de kamer koffie te drinken? Ja. Halfnaakt. Welke kant? Hij is rechtsdragend. Of bedoel je het? Dat weet ik. Is hij dit? En hij snurkt. Ja. En die shirt ik ben heel blij dat ik een vriend boven zit. Maar heb je ook? Nou ja, een verdieping en een kamer. Ik hoor soms een boot voorbij gaan, denk ik. Midden in Utrecht. Ik hoor soms een boot voorbij gaan. Ja, we houden van hier. In het oude show nemen. Oh, die is wat leuk. Doe het niet zo leuk. Dat is een babyleutje. Billetje ook. Sorry, ik ben hier heel trots op. Ja, daarom. Zeg ik. Maar even één. Ik zeg het nog maar even verwoest. Wat ben ik toch blij? Hartje weg! Ja, nu het moment. Kan jij het dan? Ja. Ik heb het niet.
Okay, people, super kleine introduction starting here.
de zelfrespect en het opbouwen. En dan komt hij als een stormland van onderen. Oeh! Hij weet waar die chocofles komt. Mannen van weet je dat? Kijk, daar is die chocofles vol van. Nou ja, dan moet je in de jacuzzi zitten. Was het voor jou net zo? Oeps, I did it again. Mannelijke kijk. And all the girls say I'm very fly for a monkey. And it's just for audio?
No, it's for video. It now listens to audio, and I program.
It projects a video.
It generates some visuals, but somehow I have coded myself into. So what I'm trying to do now is to get close it and different.
certain motions of the objects that you're seeing to your code as sort of visuals, like when I enter this string of text, then the objects I'm seeing are reacting to this and this and this.
Yeah, but I think it works with parameters. So
like 50 to somewhat gigahertz is like this motion.
Yes. Yeah, or you take.
That's exactly what I was kind of missing.
For example, you take say the color of the cube, and you make it get affected by audio in say the 600
so you're making sort of like a live program visual, because that's what you're interested in.
Yeah. So pretty much the like visualization things. Yeah. You see it with a video or whatever. You do that in this.
Because I think that's a major thing for the accessibility. The code itself to look at. People automatically like get a block in front of their head, like, whoa, I don't get this, tune out or something. bring it in another way, trying to get it from that angle, then you can sort of sneak it in along the way, and people will still like, oh yeah,
and so Flux also has facilities for affecting everything that's on the screen, which includes the code itself.
Yeah, because then you can actually transform your code into its own visual.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've got one that's working. It works because it doesn't listen to.
Oh, blame it on the music.
Well, now I got too large screen. Yeah. So I will just explain without music, and then I will try to figure out what's up with music. This one is certain ones. It actually implements space. What I do here, again, I something is selected and I press R5 to execute some selection. If nothing is selected, then I can execute the whole code. Then what I do here, I create a function, create army, and this function
Actually, more people right now are you making the sound here in the corner. But you're sending it out. Right now, it's just me making the sound.
Op die manier, ja, dat kan natuurlijk. Maar wat je dan sneller zou doen, is heel het geluid.
No.
Het geheel in een routine zetten, zeg maar.
Ja, oké. You're showing how to program right now. Yeah.
Dat willen we eigenlijk alleen maar laten zien dat het makkelijk is. En je moet even dus over die barrière heen van de tekstwerk. Er is een hele hoop snelheid met een groei bezig. Het is natuurlijk wat anders als je gewoon, maar je wil een synthesizer hebben. Een soort van synthesizer, dan moet je gewoon zoiets als die zitten. Dan kun je natuurlijk heel snel een beetje de knoppen draaien. Op save en je kunt inzetten. Maar als je synthesizer, dan weet je dat ja, vooral de ouders, daar had je helemaal geen preset, zeg maar.
Ja, precies. Dan moet je, als je dan een geluidje had, dan moet je de volgende keer weer helemaal terug zoeken.
Ja, precies. En ja, uiteindelijk is dit voor live, als je er een beetje bekend mee bent, toch wel redelijk snel. En dan zijn dit natuurlijk hele lullige voorbeelden eigenlijk. Gewoon met één oscillator waar je...
Maar neem aan dat je er ook wel in groeit of zo en wat je eruit haalt.
Ja, zeker. Het is net als dat je, als je met een modulaire synth meer en meer werkt, dan weet je waar de interessante geluiden zitten.
Hey, en is het platformafhankelijk? Het is alleen Mac dit?
Nee, het draait ook op Linux en Windows ook, maar dan via een Python interpreter. Dus dat is een beetje buggy nog. Maar het is eigenlijk native Mac en het draait ook heel erg goed onder Linux. Zo is het. En Windows is nog een beetje beter aan het staan. Je werkt zelf met Windows.
Ja. Ja, ik heb een verleden wel met Linux gewerkt. Vooral heel erg ik ben dat heel moe.
Ja, dat kan ik me voorstellen. Al is Ubuntu nou wel...
Ja, weet ik. Ik heb het gezien.
Dat is het automatisch afspelen, maar dat is het eerste zoals ik nu hier heb ik gewoon zeg maar van de dingen. Kan ik een beetje bekijken en dat ik veel waarde veranderen of zo. En het dan opnieuw afspelen.
Making sound one way or the other, being able to change that while it's playing without doing any of the administration. Usually you would have to take
Nou, meestal bouwen we dat een beetje op. Beginnen we eigenlijk vooral met kleine geluidjes, zeg maar één keer klinken of zo, of 2 keer. En dan even ruimte voor de andere, misschien wat de leukste veranderen. Kijk, dit is gewoon de code om want hij ook laat zien.
Make this lower. That's how I recognize it.
Met de frequentie. Dat is alles.
Okay. But it took you a long time to, that's what I mean. How can you expect quickly in live situations? Like this.
If you want to be really quick in acting, then you don't live code.
No.
Then you take an interface, like we play a lot with joysticks in other contexts. When there's these freaks, you really have to react to the
freaks.
It's probably the same as that can be done before, like preset.
Ja, dat zijn we zelf geschreven. Je hebt gewoon een naam gegeven. Zoals ik nu met de sound noem.
That's also for us.
it's not true that we do everything on the stage. On the spot. With very poor results. Live coding things we've heard that start from zero, they normally don't need really.
No, unless you are very clever and very. Ja.
Ga je dat in B2 of... Oké. Oh ja. Ja. Het is niet leuk.
Hello? Hello? Hello everyone. I'm sorry to interrupt you and the conversations and all the demos and live coding going on. But I would like to announce Susie Jae, who's going to perform for us now. And while she's getting ready, I'd like to use the time to say a special thanks to all the presenters and performers tonight, which is Florian, of course, PowerBooks Unplugged, Carla, Jan, Aart and Rob, and Jelle of the Game Jan installation. Of course, Achim for his demo there, and PowerBooks Unplugged again for their demo here. And also a big thanks to the people behind the stage that made this possible. The production team, Richard, Wilco, all the people doing the registration and the streaming tonight, Maarten, Danja, and Carl, and who else is there up there? Okay, well, thank you all. And Susie Jae, are you ready? Okay. Okay, and thank you all for coming tonight.
so lovely to an upwind night. was tagging along for the ride. This ugly big mouth fish really made us laugh. And while I stood still, I felt a chill. I thought that maybe you did too. I wanted to feel that way forever. And that's why, if you're looking at me, I'll try to be what you want to see. And if I'm ever that lucky, you won't have to be so, you won't have to be so sad. You won't have to be so sad. Last night, I was trying to read in bed. I got to watching you sleep instead. Even when I got tired, I couldn't stop. Because I love you so. And I pray you know. But I'm not one for praying. You knew I couldn't say that without making a joke. And that's why, if you're looking at me, I'll try to be what you want to see. And if I'm ever that lucky, you won't have to be so, you won't have to be so sad. Won't have to be so sad.